Good evening, everyone. There's a major political confrontation happening right now in Washington, and it involves names you know very well: Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and the ongoing controversy about Jeffrey Epstein. If you've been following this story, you know it's complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of accusations flying back and forth, and it can be hard to keep track of what's actually true versus what's just political spin. So tonight, I want to walk you through exactly what happened this week, step by step, in plain language. No jargon, no confusing legal terms, just the facts you need to understand what's going on and why it matters. Let's start with what happened on Monday, February 17th. Hillary Clinton was in Berlin, Germany, attending something called the Munich Security Conference. Now, despite the name, this conference actually takes place in various European cities. And this year, part of it was in Berlin. It's a big annual gathering where world leaders, military officials, and policy experts come together to discuss international security issues. While she was there, Hillary sat down for an interview with the BBC. That's the British Broadcasting Corporation, Britain's main public television network. And in that interview, she made a very serious accusation. She said that President Donald Trump's administration is engaged in a cover-up regarding the Jeffrey Epstein files. Now that's a strong word, cover-up. Let me explain what she means by that. As you may remember, Congress passed a law late last year called the Epstein Files Transparency Act. This law specifically requires the Department of Justice, that's the federal agency responsible for enforcing laws and running prosecutions, to release all documents and files related to their investigation of Jeffrey Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. The Justice Department has released some files. In fact, they've released millions of pages of documents. But according to Hillary Clinton and many members of Congress from both political parties, the Justice Department is still holding back about 3 million more pages. They haven't released everything, even though the law says they must. Hillary Clinton said in her interview, and I'm quoting her directly here, "Get the files out. They are slow walking it." When she says slow walking, she means they're deliberately taking their time, dragging their feet, delaying the release of these documents. She also said they are redacting the names of men who are in it. That means they're blocking out names, using black marker or computer editing to hide identities. And she said they are stonewalling legitimate requests from members of Congress. That means they're refusing to answer questions or provide information that lawmakers are legally entitled to see. Clinton's basic accusation is this: the Trump administration doesn't want certain information to come out because it would be embarrassing or damaging to people in power, possibly including President Trump himself. Now, before I go further, let me remind everyone who Jeffrey Epstein was, because if you're just tuning into this story, it's important to understand the background. Jeffrey Epstein was an American financier, a wealthy man who managed money for very rich people. But he was also a sexual predator and a criminal. In 2008, he pleaded guilty to state charges in Florida related to paying for sex with an underage girl. He served only about 13 months in jail, which most people agreed was far too short for such a serious crime. But Epstein's crimes went much deeper than that one case. For decades, from the 1990s right up until 2019, Epstein ran what prosecutors call a sex trafficking operation. He recruited young girls, many of them teenagers as young as 14 years old, and he forced or manipulated them into performing sexual acts for himself and for his wealthy, powerful friends. He did this in multiple locations: his mansion in New York City, his estate in Palm Beach, Florida, his ranch in New Mexico, and his private island in the Caribbean. He kept detailed records, thousands of emails, photographs, flight logs showing who flew on his private airplane, and even videos. In July 2019, federal prosecutors finally arrested Epstein again, this time on much more serious federal sex trafficking charges. But before he could go to trial, he died in his jail cell in August 2019. Officials ruled it a suicide, though many people continue to question that conclusion. After Epstein died, his longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested and charged. In 2021, she was convicted of helping Epstein recruit and abuse young girls. She's currently serving a 20-year prison sentence. So that's the background. Now, the big question that has remained since Epstein's death is, What about all the other people who were part of his network? What about the wealthy and powerful men who flew on his plane, visited his properties, and allegedly participated in the abuse of these young girls? That's where the Epstein files come in. These are the documents, the emails, the flight logs, the photographs, the FBI interview reports that might provide answers to those questions. Congress passed a law saying all of these files must be released to the public. The thinking is simple. If powerful people committed crimes, the American people have a right to know. Sunlight, as they say, is the best disinfectant. Transparency helps ensure accountability. But according to Hillary Clinton and many others, the Trump administration is not following that law. They're releasing some documents, but holding back others. And Clinton believes she knows why. In her BBC interview, Clinton said, "There's something about this administration's attitude toward this which I think really leads us to conclude they have something to hide. We don't. We have been willing to say whatever we know. We've even done it under oath." Now here's where this gets personal. Hillary Clinton and her husband, former President Bill Clinton, are both scheduled to testify before Congress later this month as part of the House Oversight Committee's investigation into the Epstein case. Hillary is scheduled to testify on Wednesday, February 26th. Bill Clinton is scheduled to testify the following day, Thursday, February 27th. This will actually be historic. It will be the first time a former president has testified before Congress in more than 40 years. The Clintons initially resisted this. They were subpoenaed. That means they received a legal order commanding them to appear, but they didn't show up. The House Oversight Committee, led by Republican Chairman James Comer, threatened to hold them in contempt of Congress, which is a serious matter that can result in criminal charges. Eventually, the Clintons agreed to testify, but they have insisted from the beginning that the hearings should be public, not private. They want cameras in the room. They want the American people to be able to watch. Why? Hillary explained it clearly in her BBC interview. She said the Republicans who are demanding her testimony are trying to create a distraction. They want to focus attention on the Clintons, who, she points out, have never been accused of any crimes by Epstein's victims, in order to deflect attention away from President Trump, whose name appears many, many times in the Epstein files. They keep trying to divert, Clinton said. Look at this shiny object. We're going to have the Clintons, even Hillary Clinton, who never met the guy. We're going to have her there. Let's focus on what's really happening here. You have an attorney general and a Justice Department attempting to hide information that should be made public. Now let's be clear about what we know and don't know about the Clintons' connection to Epstein. Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's private plane multiple times in the early 2000s. Flight logs show trips to Thailand, Brunei, Rwanda, Russia, and China. Bill Clinton has said these trips were all related to his charitable work through the Clinton Foundation. He says he was working on HIV/AIDS programs and other humanitarian projects, and Epstein offered his plane to transport Clinton, his staff, and his Secret Service detail. Importantly, these flights happened in 2002 and 2003, before Epstein's first conviction in 2008. At that time, Epstein's crimes were not yet public knowledge. Bill Clinton has repeatedly said he was not aware of Epstein's criminal behavior. He says he had not been in contact with Epstein for more than a decade before Epstein's 2019 arrest. Clinton has never been accused by any of Epstein's victims of wrongdoing. However, some of the recently released Epstein files do include photographs that have raised questions. One photo shows Bill Clinton with Epstein. Another shows Clinton in what appears to be a hot tub with Epstein and a woman the Justice Department described as a victim of Epstein's abuse. These photos are troubling, but they don't prove Clinton committed any crimes. Context matters, and that context hasn't been fully explained. Hillary Clinton has said she never met Jeffrey Epstein at all. She has said she met Ghislaine Maxwell on a few occasions, likely at Clinton Foundation events where thousands of people attended. She describes her knowledge of Epstein and Maxwell as very limited and totally unrelated to their behavior or their crimes. The Clintons have both given sworn written statements describing their interactions with Epstein and Maxwell. They've said they're willing to talk openly about what they know, which, according to them, isn't much. and they've repeatedly called for full transparency. Release all the files, let the public see everything. So that's where the Clintons stand. Now let's talk about President Trump's response. On Monday evening, February 17th, Trump was aboard Air Force One flying back to Washington after spending President's Day weekend in Florida. Reporters traveling with him asked about Hillary Clinton's accusations, and Trump gave a strong response. "I have nothing to hide," Trump said. "I've been exonerated. I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. They went in hoping that they'd find it, and they found just the opposite. I've been totally exonerated." Trump repeated the word exonerated multiple times, meaning cleared of wrongdoing, proven innocent. He also said, referring to the Clintons, they're getting pulled in, and that's their problem. Trump then accused Hillary Clinton of having what he called Trump derangement syndrome, a term Trump and his supporters use to describe people they believe have an irrational, obsessive hatred of Trump that clouds their judgment. So who's telling the truth here? That's the question everyone wants answered. Let me give you the facts as we know them about Trump and Epstein. Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were social acquaintances in the 1980s and 1990s. They were both wealthy men living in New York City and Palm Beach, Florida. They moved in the same social circles, attending the same parties, belonging to the same clubs, knowing the same people. In 2002, Trump gave an interview to New York Magazine where he said, and I quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." That quote has come back to haunt Trump, especially the part about women on the younger side. When Epstein's crimes became public, people looked back at that quote and wondered, did Trump know what Epstein was doing? Trump has said that he ended his friendship with Epstein in the mid-2000s after Epstein made inappropriate advances toward a young woman at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Florida. According to Trump, he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago and cut off contact with him. Now here's what the Epstein files show about Trump. Trump's name appears in the files tens of thousands of times. A New York Times analysis using special search tools found Trump mentioned over 38,000 times across more than 5,300 documents. However, and this is important, many of those mentions are not accusations. They're news articles that Epstein saved. They're references in emails where Epstein is discussing Trump's business deals or political campaigns. Being mentioned in the files does not automatically mean someone committed a crime. That said, there are some documents in the files that raise serious questions. There are FBI reports from people who called in tips claiming Trump was involved in Epstein's activities. There are witness statements from women who say they encountered Trump at Epstein-related events. There is an FBI intake form from a witness who reported secondhand information about alleged abuse involving Trump. The Justice Department, led by Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi, has said these allegations were investigated and found to be not credible. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche has repeatedly stated that the department is hiding nothing and is committed to transparency. But here's where the skepticism comes in. Pam Bondi works for Donald Trump. She was appointed by Trump to be Attorney General. So when she says the department investigated Trump and found nothing wrong, critics like Hillary Clinton ask, can we really trust that investigation was impartial? Or is Bondi protecting her boss? This is exactly what Hillary Clinton was getting at in her BBC interview. She's saying, how can we trust the Trump administration to investigate itself? How can we believe they're being transparent when they're holding back millions of pages of documents? And why are they so focused on making the Clintons testify when other people whose names appear far more frequently in the files haven't been asked to testify at all? It's a fair question, and it's one that members of Congress from both parties have been asking as well. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie from Kentucky is very conservative. He's not someone who typically agrees with Hillary Clinton about anything, but even he has criticized the Justice Department's handling of the Epstein files. Massie helped write the Transparency Act that requires full disclosure. He's been publicly calling for the release of Internal Justice Department communications, explaining why certain investigations were not pursued and why certain names are still redacted. Other Republicans have also expressed frustration. They say if the law requires transparency, then there should be transparency. Period. It shouldn't matter whether the names being protected are Democrats or Republicans, whether they're donors or political enemies. The law is the law. Democrats have been even more vocal. They've pointed out that other countries are doing what America should be doing, investigating and prosecuting people connected to Epstein's crimes. France has opened criminal investigations. Britain just arrested Prince Andrew, well, he's not called Prince anymore, but Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the Queen's second son, on charges related to Epstein. Other European countries have launched investigations into people in their countries who appear in the files. But in America, silence. No new investigations, no new arrests. Just Jeffrey Epstein, dead, and Ghislaine Maxwell, in prison. That's it. After decades of abuse involving over 1,000 victims, only 2 people have faced consequences. That's what has so many people angry and frustrated. Now, Hillary Clinton made another important point in her interview that I want to highlight. She was asked whether Prince Andrew should be forced to testify before the U.S. Congress, and she said, "I think everybody should testify who is asked to testify. I just want it to be fair. I want everybody treated the same way." Her point is that she and Bill are being forced to testify even though they've never been accused of crimes by any victims. Meanwhile, other people whose names appear far more frequently in the files, who have more documented connections to Epstein, have not been called to testify. Why the double standard? Clinton believes it's political. She thinks Republicans are using the Epstein investigation as a way to attack the Clintons for partisan advantage while protecting their own side. Is she right? I can't say for certain. But I can say this: the lack of consistency is troubling. If Congress is serious about getting to the truth, then everyone should be treated equally. Everyone with significant connections to Epstein should be questioned. Every lead should be investigated. And those investigations should be done publicly, transparently, so the American people can judge for themselves. That's what Hillary Clinton means when she says sunlight is the best disinfectant. She's quoting a famous saying by Louis Brandeis, who was a Supreme Court justice back in the early 1900s. The idea is simple. Secrecy allows corruption to thrive, but transparency forces accountability. So where do things stand now? What happens next? Well, as I mentioned, Hillary and Bill Clinton will testify later this month. Those depositions will be recorded on video, though they'll initially be held behind closed doors. The Clintons have requested that the depositions be made public afterward, but Chairman Comer hasn't agreed to that yet. What will the Clintons say when they testify? Based on their written statements and public comments, they'll likely repeat what they've said all along. Bill took some flights on Epstein's plane for charity work in the early 2000s, before Epstein's crimes were public. Hillary met Maxwell a few times at large events. Neither of them was aware of Epstein's criminal activity. Their knowledge is limited and unrelated to the crimes. Will that satisfy their critics? Probably not. Trump supporters will likely continue to claim the Clintons are hiding something. But unless there's actual evidence, not just speculation or conspiracy theories, those accusations are just political attacks. On the other side, will the Trump administration release the remaining 3 million pages of Epstein files? That's the big question. The law requires it. Congress is demanding it. But so far, the Justice Department has resisted. Attorney General Pam Bondi testified before Congress last week, and by all accounts, it didn't go well. She was evasive. She refused to answer key questions. She diverted attention away from the central issue. Even some Republican members of Congress were frustrated with her testimony. Hillary Clinton described Bondi's testimony as quite a scene, saying Bondi refused to answer questions. She diverted attention away from the matters at hand. She refused to look at survivors who were present in the hearing room. Those survivors, the women who were abused by Epstein and his associates when they were teenage girls, have been calling for full transparency and accountability. They want everyone involved in Epstein's operation to be investigated and, if evidence warrants it, prosecuted. They're tired of seeing the powerful protect each other while their suffering is ignored. One of those survivors was Virginia Giuffre. You may have heard her name. She was one of the most vocal accusers, someone who said she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew when she was just 17 years old. She also accused other powerful men of abuse. Tragically, Virginia Giuffre died by suicide last year at age 41. Her family released a statement after Prince Andrew's arrest, saying they believe Virginia was telling the truth and that her fight for justice is now being vindicated. That's what this is really about. It's not about partisan politics or which party can score more points. It's about justice for victims. It's about holding powerful people accountable. It's about ensuring that wealth and connections don't put someone above the law. So as you follow this story in the coming weeks, here are the key things to watch for. First, watch what happens when the Clintons testify. Will new information come out, or will it be more of what we already know? Second, watch whether the Justice Department releases more files. Will they comply fully with the Transparency Act, or will they continue to hold back documents? Third, watch whether any new investigations or prosecutions emerge. Will America follow the lead of countries like France and Britain and actually investigate the people named in these files? Or will this remain a cover-up? Fourth, watch how Congress responds. Will Republicans and Democrats work together on this issue? Or will it devolve into partisan warfare, where each side just tries to protect their own and attack the other? Let me close with this thought. This story is about more than Trump versus Clinton. It's about whether our system of justice works the way it's supposed to work. In America, we say that no one is above the law. We say that it doesn't matter how rich you are, how famous you are, or how powerful your friends are. If you commit crimes, you face consequences. Jeffrey Epstein's crimes have tested that principle. So far, we've failed the test. Only 2 people have been held accountable, while dozens, possibly hundreds, of other powerful people who were part of Epstein's network remain free, their names protected, their actions uninvestigated. Hillary Clinton is calling for transparency. She's saying, release all the files, investigate everyone, let the public see the truth. Whether you agree with her politics or not, that's a reasonable demand. That's what justice requires. Donald Trump is saying he has nothing to hide. If that's true, then he should support full transparency as well. He should be telling his Justice Department, release everything, investigate everyone, follow the evidence wherever it leads. The fact that he's not doing that, the fact that his administration is holding back files and resisting investigations, raises obvious questions. For those of you watching at home, especially those of you in your 60s, 70s, 80s who have lived through decades of American history, you know that cover-ups never end well. You remember Watergate. You remember Iran-Contra. You know that when the government tries to hide the truth, when powerful people close ranks to protect each other, it always comes out eventually. And when it does, the damage is even worse than if they'd just been honest from the beginning. So stay informed. Pay attention, demand better from your elected officials, and don't let them sweep this under the rug. Thank you for watching.